Hello, everybody. Did you know? I don't know if you know this or not. In 2004, a gentleman by the name of Ben Hammersley, he was a journalist and a reporter for the Guardian over in the UK. He was the first person on note, if I'm not mistaken, first person on note to actually use and talk about the word podcasting. The UK has had a rich history of podcasting, and we're excited today to talk to some of the best and brightest um, podcasters and content creators over in the UK. I'm excited to talk to you about this because Broadcasters Live, what we are trying to do here from an international standpoint is just to expose our community and also different parts of the world to podcasting and how other people think about the industry of podcasting, their perspective around it. And more importantly, the goal is to help you become a better podcaster and content creator. We are going to get to our guests right after this. All right, we got a nice little audience here already. You know what? I'm gonna get right into it. I'm gonna get right into um, talking about the guests that we have here today, and I'm gonna do quick introduction of all of them. Then get them all on the screen, and then we're gonna go for it. All right, Mr. Jamie Taylor. I'm gonna start with him. Jamie and I have connected since it's been about 3 years since I've known Jamie Taylor, and he by trade is a developer. He's also a Microsoft MVP, meaning that he's a very valuable person to Microsoft. They tell him stuff that no one else knows, and then if he tells somebody, he has to kill you. You know, from a developmental standpoint. But no, Jamie is also a podcaster. He's also the founder of RJJ Software. It's a podcasting company that offers editing, podcast consulting, and training. He has I don't know how many podcasts he has right now, but the most two famous that I know that I listen to all the time is the .NET Core podcast and the Waffling Tailors. And the .NET Core podcast has right now, if I'm not mistaken, he can correct me if I'm wrong. It has over 150,000 downloads today. So if you have a niche from a podcast standpoint, Jamie is the person to kind of pattern your products and your podcast after. The second guest that we have on here, Mr. Matt Cheney. Man, Matt is I love the name of his company. It is called Colt Media with a K. Colt Media with a K. He has over 16 years of content creation, radio, TV, film, online, games, and podcasting experience. I'm excited to have you meet Matt because I had the pleasure of being on his show. And the one thing that I have to tell you, he asked some great questions and they stumped me so many times. And I was like, dude, you are a great interviewer. So today I'm going to try to return the favor and hopefully, ask some really engaging questions of Matt and the rest of the guests. Okay, these two guys. Oh gosh, Anthony, Anthony and Tig. Okay, you know what? I love these guys to death. They are the founders of the website, but also the very popular and big Facebook group, Get More Listeners on How to Grow Your Podcast. It's a group that's dedicated towards helping podcasters share ideas and ask questions about tactics and strategies on how to get more listeners. Here's the thing: I don't know of any podcaster that actually does not want more listeners. If you don't want more listeners, come see me. But more importantly, you probably want to see them because if you don't want more listeners, there's an issue. But they are also the behind the scenes, the brains of the publishing company, Daniel Larson, and they have published multiple successful best-selling podcast books. Make sure you go and check them out. Daniel Larson, they messed me up with that because I was looking for their name until they told me the secret to their success. These guys are going places, and you want to make sure that you get your hands on those books. We're going to make sure we have all the links in the description. last but very, very not least, I came across this gentleman. He is probably one of the youngest podcasters that I have ever seen and actually ever heard of. That I have actually even listened to. Edward Lynch, and he's of course, over in the UK, and he is a 15-year-old student, and he is the founder of the Winner's Mindset podcast. It encourages, no, excuse me, his platform demonstrates that people across the world can do anything that they put their minds to. I'm excited. I'm not gonna tell his story because I'm gonna let him tell it here in a second. But I just want you to welcome all of these gentlemen over to Podcasters Live. How are you guys doing today, man?
Hey, good, thank you.
Amazing.
Excellent. You guys look good, man. You guys look good, except for
Thank you.
Anthony.
I showered for this.
You showered for this? It's starting already. It's starting already. That's it. I'm excited to have. We're gonna have some fun, man. We're gonna have some fun. We already got some people in the audience saying hi to us. We're gonna talk to you guys here in a second. But I did an okay job. Of introducing you guys. I do want you guys to say just one or two things about who you are and what you do, because I'm over here in the States, but you guys are over there in UK doing great things, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands a little bit more about who you are and what you do. I'm actually going to start with my man Edward.
Yeah, hi, so I'm Edward, and I'm the kind of founder of the Winner's Mindset podcast, and my aim for it is to help kind of disability children. So with me, I have a stammer myself, and through my whole life, I got hold kind of back, and I used to hide away from in every walk of my life, and now I feel free and I feel like I'm happy again, and I want to inspire children now kind of growing up that felt the same as me, and to never hold back and just be you, because this is my superpower and I'm proud of it and I want to embrace it. So cheers, thank you very much, and I'm really excited.
Well, Edward, I got to say this. I don't think you are just inspiring kids. I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on the show today. I know that's your goal, and that's exactly what you're doing. But I think you're going to be inspiring today and probably throughout the rest of your life, more than just kids. So kudos to you, man, and I really appreciate you being here. All right, Mr. Matt Cheney, how are you doing today, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm Matt. I'm the founder of Cult Media. I guess I am a podcast coach and consultant, but I prefer to go by podcasting Sherpa at the moment. It kind of fits the bill. Like, I can carry everything if you want me to, or if you just want me to point you to the top of the mountain, I can do that. And I kind of do everything in between. I'm working on building more of a personal training model for podcasters, because everyone wants to develop their show the way they want. There's a lot of generic kind of advice out there. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. I have 16 years background in sound design, sound engineering. I was former head of audio for Vice in the UK and some London post-production facilities. So I've made some terrible television, some great games, some awesome podcasts, and some films that someone might have watched somewhere once.
Give us one film that you've made that was bad.
Well, I only have I always just give the best one, don't I? So before the Freddie Mercury film came out, I did the feature-length documentary called Great Pretender, and that International Arts Emmy. So that's my peak.
There you go. That's it. Now you're done. It's a wrap.
That's done. Yeah.
Matt the Sherpa. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Jamie Taylor, how are you doing today, sir?
Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness, it's wonderful to be connected with you all, and wonderful to have this opportunity to talk to everyone who's in the chat and watching live and watching on demand. So hello, everybody. Oh my goodness. I just want to really quickly, a big head moment, point out, Steve, that I think you were using some old data, perhaps from the last time I was on the show, because I had to look up the download stats for the .NET Core podcast today.
Yes.
For esoteric reasons.
Oh Lord.
And the podcast host Libsyn has it at 546,877 likes.
You know what? I meant to say 5. I meant to say 5 there. 500,000. I did. I don't know why I said 150K.
It's easy.
Thank you. How many?
But,
how many again? How many again?
546,877.
Oh my gosh, dude, that's crazy. I'm sorry. Go ahead, man. I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. But like the way that I describe myself to people is I'm a family man, and then teacher, mentor, businessman, podcaster, and then developer right at the bottom. Right. So in that order, from most important to least important. That's how I view myself. Because my thing is, I'm never going to do it to the extent that Edward will reach. But I want to inspire and help people to get where they are going to reach, whatever potential they have. That's what I want to do. And so, that's why I started the shows. But anyway, I've been talking for way too.
No, you haven't. I appreciate that. Thank you for the correction with the downloads. All right, I got the Daniel Larsons in the building. These guys are, they have helped me when I was struggling to really think about my book concept. I bended their ear several times to help kind of get me going on this journey of writing a book. And I really just wanted to kind of verbally, like in front of everybody, like thank these guys for their time, for helping me with just kind of getting my thoughts around it. But more importantly, the fact that they were sharing knowledge with me that people pay a lot of money for. So don't send me an invoice. This thank you should be enough. For you.
Get an invoice.
Ty, I'm gonna start with you, man. Go for it.
Yeah, it's great to be here, man. I can't actually remember how we met you, Steve, how we came into contact, but the podcasting journey has been brighter since. So very glad about that. And yeah, for me and Anthony, so we work together. If you haven't sussed that one out, we are co-founders of GetMoreListeners.com, platform helping independent podcasters, get thousands of new listeners in the next 3 to 6 months using a 4-step growth process. And we also have some books, as Steve's mentioned. So we actually have multiple best-selling books under the pen name Daniel Larson, which sounds very random. It's a long story. If you look at our names, Ty Gaucher, Anthony Waneri, you can probably guess why we went with a pen name like Daniel Larson. But yeah, here we are. Been in the game for not as long as some of these others. So very, very privileged to be amongst this group.
Excellent, man. Excellent. All righty. The man, the myth with the new microphone. Those of you that know, I am, you guys know me. I am not anti-Yeti. I am pro anything else but Yeti. And when I first met Anthony, we had this Yeti. I'm like, dude, I can't even talk to you. Like, I don't even want to talk to you with that Yeti. Now he has fully super duper upgraded. Anthony, tell a little bit about yourself to everybody here in the audience, man.
Sweet. No, thank you for that. I was going to say, I think you beat me into submission to get a new mic, so I had to upgrade, had no other choice. But no, it's really good to be here. I wanted to say before I even get started, I think, Matthew, mate, what you're doing is unreal. The fact you're going out there and actually started at such a young age, to me, like Steve said, mate, is inspiring. And honestly, I think, keep doing what you're doing. Don't ever move off the path. And constantly be obsessed with really what you're doing moving forward. So again, really impressed, mate. And the rest of you, it's awesome to meet you guys. And I think Ty honestly covered the majority of the things. But yes, if you're wondering, am I in a cell? No, I'm not. I just get I get very ADHD, so I like to keep myself a bit focused while I'm working. But no, it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Excellent, man. Excellent. Same here, man. Appreciate you guys. I know I made fun of you, but you've always been good at entertaining my sense of humor. All right, so this is the UK international version, and how we always want to start, because I think it's important. There are some people. I was very fortunate, of course, when I was in the service and at a younger age, to visit the UK. And I think all of you who have, you probably except for Edward and Matt that probably don't know me that well, all of you, everybody else knows that. I think in a previous life I was British, just because of my love for everything everything British, maybe except for the food. It started as a young age watching Benny Hill, and I am a massive football fan. Of course, we call it soccer here in the States. I call it football. I'm a purist like that. What's one thing I want all of you guys to answer this question about the UK that's special to you and that has actually kind of caused you to be the person that you are? Because here's why I asked that question, is because a podcast or a podcast producer or what you do is nothing but an outcropping, I firmly believe, of who you are as a person. It's almost an extension of who you are. And I think part of where you were raised has a lot to do with that. And so since we're talking about the UK, you guys over in the UK, I want you guys to give us that perspective on that. I'm going to start with Matt, and I want Matt to answer that question first for us, please.
Yeah. One of the brilliant things about the UK is that we had the first public broadcaster. In 1922, the BBC was started. And the BBC, for me, have created all of the subcultures that I've enjoyed. So much comedy. That's a big part of my being. Take everything light-hearted. There is always a light to the shade. And the BBC has meant that people have had access to radio for free, amazing TV programs. I think it's a big part of the culture of the UK. We were just given all of that sort of media, and the BBC has a structure to it. So it was almost, we grew up with this formality. And that's a massive part of, it sounds really, what's a polite word? I felt like it was a little bit like bookwormy, being like, the BBC it's really inspired me.
No.
But if I look at it, like even all of the comedies are like Monty Python, you mentioned Benny Hill and stuff like that, documentaries that have then gone over to the US and sort of the same format's been done over there, all stemmed from here. So that's a big part of it.
Excellent, man. And I love what you said. You talked about the radio and formality, and I didn't write that question down when I gave to you guys, but I actually I will talk more about that, the whole radio perspective over in the UK as it compares to everywhere else in the world. And I think that's something that you guys do differently and do really well comparative to every place stuff. So I think that's helped kind of with the idea and perspective of podcasting as well. Jamie, you go for it. Go next, buddy.
Oh wow! So I think whilst it's not unique to the UK, I think just the access to nature, right? Today during my lunch break, I left the house. I won't tell you where I live because I don't want to dox myself, but Steve knows anyway. But and so does Squidgy, who's in the comments. Hey Squidgy, and
Squidgy.
Hey Nomad.
What's up, Mark?
But I took a walk out of the house, stepped across the street, and I don't live in the city, but I don't live in the suburbs either. Walked across the street, and there's a park with a nature trail and like a hiking area, and I just went for a walk, and I sat down at this bench, and it's maybe a story for our mutual friend Susie, Steve, and I don't know whether anyone will believe me with this, but I'm sitting at this bench, just sort of sitting there taking in the wildlife, just having a look around, getting some fresh air, and another bench 100 yards down, flutter, 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 robin. It just sort of sits there and looks across at me, and I look across at it, and then we have this moment, and then it flies away. And I'm like, that's what it's all about.
Oh wow, that's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Did he say anything to you? Like, yo, what's up, mate? No, nothing like that.
Yeah, something about Batman, but I wasn't really.
He didn't say anything to you. All right, Anthony, let's go for it, man. What's your story?
Yes, just so I've got it right. Could you repeat the question?
Dios mío.
Again, please. Okay.
Oh my God! You know what? I'm not even going to answer. Ask it again. Yeah. See, this is why. Oh, did he freeze now? He froze up on us.
No, I'm here.
Okay, I got you now. So the question, sir, was, tell us like one thing that you really love about the UK where you grew up, if you grew up in the UK, and then also how that's kind of shaped where you are right now and who you are and kind of why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, good question. I mean, to be honest, I think it'll probably be in terms of the culture. I think it's one of those places where we're extremely sarcastic. like we don't take things too seriously. And I think having that kind of playful attitude to a lot of things has shaped in terms of me and how I am, sort of thing. And earlier, when I first moved to the UK, to be honest with you, a lot of what shaped me as a character was my experience with racism. Not to put a downer. It's
No,
not
go
a
for it,
downer.
man. Go ahead, man.
Place. But yeah, it taught me a lot in terms of personally growing and having to mature at a very young age, having to harden myself and persevere. Whether that's in business, personal life, podcasting, whatever realm it is, understand that you're always going to have pushback, but that comes with it, right? And of course, things are drastically different now. Like, I can't remember the last time I've experienced anything of that sort. But in terms of what shaped me, in UK, I'll probably say that, to be, completely honest. And that's why I wanted to get the question again to make sure I didn't misunderstand what you were asking.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. You said something, and I'm gonna get back. I'm gonna get to the remaining two in a second, though. You said something that I wrote down. You said that you don't take things. I guess British people don't take things too serious. And as someone over here in the States, our perspective is you take everything serious over there in the UK. Seriously, I can't speak for all Americans, but like seriously, I have some Americans in the audience. Please back me up on this one. It's our thought process is like, man, they're freaking serious. Like us Americans, we're super like, oh, whatever. But I always felt like you guys were super like put together, like connected, and just like, hey. So when you said that, it just kind of threw me back for a second, man. Sorry, man.
No, it's all good. I mean, I think it's both in it. It's like we are serious, but then we're not serious. It's like we'll take the mic, take the piss or whatever, out of each other. And like if you have a mate that's act in a certain way, someone's gonna call it out, or someone's gonna take the mic out of them. So we're not serious in that respect. But in other things, like I guess we are in some ways. But I always find it interesting because in the US, what you guys imagine is some posh guy drinking tea, sipping that. For us, we probably imagine a drunk chav, like walking down the road or something like that. So that's the contrast, I guess.
Interesting, actually, and you are 100% correct. All right, Mr. Edward, the question I posed the same question to you.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me. I think with me, it's just about with the people. I think what really explains it for me is when I opened up about my speech, the amount of people that just came to me saying, "You've inspired me," this and that and the other, and how inclusive the country is at this moment, and how it's kind of changed in the last kind of 10 years is just mad. I think you see women playing more sport. You see me doing this. You see loads of people just coming together, and I think that's what's happened. I think the country is kind of together in that sense, and it's made people like me, other people, feel more open about doing these things. I think with the people, it just exactly like the others have said, just chill, just kind of laid back, and just really like it at times. Yeah, for sure.
Dude, okay, man, listen to me. At 15-year-old, were any of us this cool as Edward?
No.
No. And you in the audience at 15, were you as cool as this dude? Would you have been able to like give that such a mature, well-rounded answer? Man, dude, you listen to me, man. I'm so happy that you're here. I really am. Really am, dude. You are inspired. Like I said, you're inspiring more than kids. You're inspiring Jamie because Jamie needs it. All right. Last but very not least, the curly head guy up top, Mr. Tag. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, not gonna lie, I'm struggling. I was initially thought of the nature, and then Jamie kind of called out. So shout out Jamie because I actually really agree with that one. But now I'm a bit lost. And then Anthony said the culture, so I guess I agree with that. But to build on that, I think looking at some of the comments, I'm gonna kind of jump on White Label American podcast bandwagon, talking about the football. I think considering how small the UK is in the rest of the world, I think it's very, very rich in culture. I'm mainly thinking about music, sport. Proportionally, a lot more comes out of that country than it should, given the size and the population, that kind of thing. That's definitely had a big part. And kind of going back to the football, it might not be that related to podcasting so much, but being in a country in, very densely populated place, very close confined, and just witnessing every day how just crazy people get in, massive groups of people, how much people can rally behind something like football. I think it kind of subconsciously gets into you from a pretty young age, how passionate people can become about something and how people can kind of unite over a certain passion or a certain interest, and that kind of thing. And I guess it's like a sense of crowd community, isn't it? So that'll probably be that one for me.
Yeah, you're tugging at my football heartstrings right now, of course, right? And going down that passionate route that that the UK has, so much more so than we do here in the States, right? We're excited about. Here's the thing, and this is, I'm going to give people the number one reason why Americans probably don't like football or soccer. I'm going to give the number one reason, and here's why. It's the scoring, right? 1 or 2-0 is not exciting to Americans, more so than, home runs, football, scores, and basketball scores that go over 100 points, right? I love it because of the strategy, and then of course when I found the best team in the world, Manchester City. There you go. Thank you, Edward. I know you love it. I just fell in love with the sport even more. We're gonna go here to. I just want to thank you. I just want to make sure I say hi to everybody who's out here, saying something. The most lucrative show on the BBC, Doctor Who. Love Doctor Who. Grew up watching Doctor Who. And Matt, you're 100% correct. When I think about it, there are so many shows that when I was a kid that started over in the UK, and then they were just brought over here to the States, and we ended up just kind of falling in love with them. I do want to ask one question, and this question is, and everybody, I want everybody once again to answer this. I told you guys I wasn't going to do this, but I think this question deserves it. What, in your perspective, is a podcast? Right? We talked a little bit about this at the very beginning, because nowadays everybody has a different perspective on what that could be, and all of you are in the industry of podcasting, and I want to make sure that everybody gets their perspective, from the people who are actually in the industry. And what are your thoughts on that? And I'm going to start with the last guy that I just finished with. Tag, can you talk about that?
Sure. I mean, I won't go into too much detail. I'll spare everyone, leave some for the rest. But I just see a podcast as a broadcasted conversation, ultimately. I don't think it has to be much deeper than that. I think, it can go in different ways, can appear in slightly different versions of that form. But yeah, I think it just boils down to a conversation, a message, through dialogue or even monologue, I guess, that's broadcasted, that's shared.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with that. Jamie.
So for me, I feel like I'm going to be stealing Taig's description, but it is a form of content that you can subscribe to, and that you get notified when something new happens. So it's not like your TV, right? Because technically you subscribe to your TV broadcast, right? You don't get told when that's about to start, and TV is not necessarily on demand, but podcast, in the form it takes, is an on-demand delivery of content that you have chosen, right? Whereas like TV, you have almost no control over what's being broadcast to you. You can flip between the channels, but you can't decide, today I want to watch The Simpsons, or today I want to watch Premier League football, or whatever, right? You don't have that choice. You have the choice of, I can look through the channels to find the thing. But with a podcast, it's like, I will subscribe to Steve's podcasts. I will subscribe to Matt's podcasts and Edward's podcasts and Anthony and Taig's podcasts. I'm curating my own selection there. Whereas like TV and things like that are not curated. They're like, or rather they're curated by someone else. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. Maybe I'm not right. Tell me. People in the comments, people on the show with me, tell me.
100%. Everybody in the audience, if you have a comment, but also if you have a question for the season panel that's up here, if you have a question, make sure you go ahead and put that in there so we can have a good conversation tonight. And if you have a question about your podcast or getting started or something like that, we have we have some people on here that are experts, and they can help you with that as well too. Matt, I want to get your perspective on this answer too, on this question, if you will, around what's a podcast.
Yeah, for me, it boils down to on-demand content, I think. I do agree that there are some purists out there that would say a podcast is audio content that is delivered via an RSS feed. It's syndicated to them and people opt in. But I think now that we've moved into the era of video, and people are repurposing radio shows, TV shows, the delineation between an interview and an audio drama or a documentary in audio form is kind of blurred. And then you've got the same with the video side of things. So it's just on-demand content. You go out, like Jamie said, and you find the stuff you want to watch and you follow or subscribe it. That is a podcast.
Yeah, I like that. I think I like the idea. When I started podcasting in 2007, we didn't have the idea initially of an RSS feed till we were actually told about it, right? So I guess it really wasn't a podcast. But what we were doing was we were producing conversations, right? We were creating a problem. We were helping solve a problem when we first started the podcast. We were recording it, and then we would bring people on, and then the whole perspective changed once we heard about the concept of podcasting and RSS feed, and then we started to do it that way. But I don't think we started out thinking that, oh my gosh, this has to be an RSS feed. I think we started with the concept and the idea of the conversation first, and then I guess the delivery method of that kind of came second. Edward, what's your perspective? So when you started your podcast, what were you thinking about, or what was something that you were like, man, this is going to be this is how I want to get this message across? And then probably prior to that, what was that message that you wanted to get across?
I think for me, it was just I was so bored of being known as the kid that can't talk, or me being known as the kid that can't do this things. My whole life, I got told that I couldn't be a football player. My whole life, I got told I couldn't be like a football coach, and I was bored of that kind of way of doing things. And I wanted to put myself out there and show people that now, this is not the case, and that I can do it. And when I first actually kind of produced it, a lot of people laughed at me. I went in school the next few weeks. I can't tell you how many people laughed at me. It was insane. But very fast, people expect me to quit, but I kept on going, and it took me kind of a long time to get to grip in terms of the kind of with the people that were watching it and with the views. But I was kind of willing to work hard at it, because I knew that at the end of it, that it would help me, but it would help so many other people. And that was my main. I didn't want a 6-year-old kid in like me to be thinking, I can't do this, because it hurts so much, Steve. It hurts so much. And it actually it's actually making me cry even talking about it, because honestly, it gets me emotional, because I was sat in primary school, I was sat in school, and so many people just laughed and told me that I can't do it. And that was the main reason, because I was just so angry about it, and I just wanted to change it.
Dude, come on, man. Why are you trying? Come on, Edward. I didn't ask you to get me emotional. I mean, you are getting me emotional. I'm so serious, man. Like I'm like when you were talking, I can see you going to school, and I can see the pride that you had on your chest for what you probably created, right? This podcast, this concept, this idea. Then I can see you walking in school, and I can see the kids, just, oh my gosh, there's a guy, you think he's got a podcast, and what does he think he's doing? Da 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 da. And then they're trying to just tear you down, but you stood fast for what it is that you wanted to get out there. And man, like I said, I keep saying it, but you are not just inspiring kids, man. You are inspiring a whole bunch of adults and old folks like myself, dude, that sometimes we feel like when we want to stop, right? I think people are going to probably come back to this episode and listen to what you just said. Actually, I'm going to make sure I cut a clip of that. If I'm down, I'm going to give it to everybody. I'm going to give a little clip of what Edward said. When you're down and out, you just listen to what Ed said. It was excellent, man. I appreciate you, man. I really appreciate you. We have a question. Did your podcast start as a podcast, or was it something else that became a podcast? Was it originally just audio, or was it video always a part of it? Great question, and I'm going to have Matt answer that question, and then I'm going to have Anthony and Tig answer this question a little differently.
Yeah, so for all of my clients and everyone I produced, a lot of the time, definitely from 2016 to 2020, the selling point of podcasting was you didn't have to do the video. Like you don't have to get dressed. You can do it at different locations. You can remote record. You can build stuff up over time. Since 2020, I think there's been a real push and expectation for people to have, especially vertical video now, but some video element so that the audience can engage with you and your show. However, I don't think the data is there that people watching vertical videos will result in a podcast download in audio. There's not enough for me there to warrant that that's definitely a link. But it is great for brand exposure. So yeah, then when I launched my podcast, I shot it all on Riverside, and it got uploaded. No, in fact, Series 1, there was no video. Series 1 was all audio. And then Series 2 was more interview shows. That was both. For the social media angle, for the YouTube angle. It depends on what you're making, I think is my point. It depends on whether your barrier to entry is your problem. If you've got a great idea or you've got passion like Edward, like if a video was going to stop him creating the content he's created, then as his Sherpa, I would say, mate, don't worry about video. Just get your message out there and change people's lives. So that's kind of my stance on video, audio, and the evolution of that.
Excellent. Anthony, now you guys deal with just a ton of clients in your group, right? And when you are talking to them and they first come to you guys with a concept or an idea for a podcast, or they've been kind of tiptoeing around the idea, are you consulting them or having a conversation with a video potentially in mind, or are you starting with the concept and audio piece and then kind of possibly thinking about it from a video standpoint? What's your thoughts?
Yeah. To be honest with you, the first thing that we ask them, and the first thing I'll ask anyone who's doing audio and considering video or vice versa, is why. Why do you want to do video? What is it about that you want to do? And whenever you dig deep enough, the reasons are one of three things. Number one, they genuinely prefer to be on video, which again, rare but fine. I think that I love that. I think that's brilliant. Go for it. Number two, they are struggling to grow their current audio podcast, and they believe YouTube or a video format is going to be kind of the not an escape, but going to save them in terms of discoverability. And really, with that reason, I think when you dig much deeper, it's actually, hey, look, let's just solve the main problem first. If the show and content isn't attracting the right people in an audio format, maybe it's the content itself. So that's where we start off, And then the third reason is honestly because I think everyone else is doing it, so I want to do it as well. Which is the herd mentality. That when you dig into the herd mentality, why do you want to do it? Because everyone else is doing it. Because surely it leads to more growth, and we're back to reason one. Reason two, sorry. So really, where we start off is why. What is your reason? And that's where we kind of go from there, really.
Excellent. Jamie, will audio podcasting ever go away?
So personally, I don't think audio podcasting will go away. I think it will be around, right? Because there's going to be people who are doing chores around the house and want to listen in, or people who are going for a run, or going on a walk or something. So they'll need something to keep them going, right? Like ebooks didn't kill off traditional print books, and they didn't
Mm.
kill off audiobooks. But you can say that they are as convenient as audiobooks, right? But people need these things. If I'm driving a car, I don't want to be watching a video at the same time, right? So I don't think either will kill the other off. I just think that perhaps they'll diverge and they'll go in different directions, and you'll get innovations in audio in the same way that you get innovations in video, but there'll be different innovations, right? And it will require rethink the types of stories that they're telling. I think
Mm.
because there's a brilliant podcast called the TED Talk Hours podcast.
Mhm,
And what they do
mhm,
is they
mhm.
take their best TED Talks, strip the
Yeah.
audio out, and
Yeah.
put it out as a podcast. Problem as an audio only podcast. Problem is that the majority of them, when they say, and as you can see on this
Yeah.
chart,
Yeah.
it doesn't work on audio, right? But they haven't really. All they've done is just strip the audio and put it out there. So it will
Yeah.
require creators to really think about the content they're putting out, and like you said, Anthony, why do you want to do video, right? And as the White Label America podcast has said in the comments here, why is an incredibly important question. Simon Sinek has built partially his career around getting people to start with asking why.
Yeah. Agreed. It starts with why. And I agree with you about the TED Talk piece. And one of the things that we deal with a lot of times is when we help people go live, the tendency is like, Steve, I just want to turn my live stream into a podcast. I'm like, I literally like spasm, like stop. I'm not a super duper purist, but one thing I know is that I don't want to hear anybody talking about the comments while I'm driving. Oh my gosh, there's so and so. Hey Jamie, hey, oh we got so and so in the studio. Oh my gosh, I don't want to hear that. Give me a problem. Give me the solution to my problem. But what we do is that, like, which is what I'll do with this, is that I will take the audio out from each one of you, and then whatever question that I've posed, I will actually do a narrative aspect of a podcast. So it takes all of the hey, we got White Label America podcasting in the building. It just takes all of that out, and I just cut right to the chase of what Edward said. And then now it's a completely different podcasting experience, but that requires work. That requires some work. But that's how we leverage this if you want to get the best out of all the content that you kind of put out there. I want to go back to something foundational to the UK that I think over here, of course, in the States, that we take for granted. When I was younger, we didn't, was the radio aspect. And you talked about it, Matt, around the BBC and how it was the formality of the BBC and the radio piece. How much of that do you think has impacted kind of the dare I say, the more professionalism, the more professional nature? I feel, this is just me, I think there's a different level of professionalism in the production that goes on over in the UK than I think almost probably anywhere, maybe except for Australia. Australia's production value is actually pretty tight too. Am I going too far afield, or is that something that you guys?
No, I think it's I think you hit the nail on the head. I think everyone kind of had access to the BBC content. Like Radio 1 was the biggest station growing up. It had all the charts music on it, like all the pop music. It was aimed at young people. They did roadshows every year, and they held the audience, and it was free, and it had no adverts. Now this is a big difference to America, because as America sort of pushed radio further and farther than the UK did, they also commercialized it super quick. And there's an irony. Like, I remember growing up and hearing things on Radio 4, which is mainly like radio documentaries, talking conversations, like the football might be on there. There's radio dramas like The Archers and stuff like that. I remember growing up thinking Radio 4 is terrible. And now I'm a podcast producer, producing talking head like interviews, building radio documentaries in that, like sports commentary. I just thought, I didn't realize what I was being influenced by at the time. And as I said, because the BBC was a government-funded institute, they had ways and means of doing things, which means that everyone went through the BBC system, all had a certain level of education, right or wrong. Like they're like military, right? They all did the same things, they all worked the same way, they all worked to time. So that influence coming into the audio space from sort of the top down, as you kind of put it, it trickles down, and the UK podcasting space has that as a sort of a beacon or an example of audio only content that we can aim towards or go away from. There's some great content out there that is very far from BBC style content, but we've always had that like military audio format that was ready for us, and if you wanted to learn it, you could.
Excellent. I've had the privilege of having James Critland on Podcasters Live twice, right? For those of you who don't know, it's he's the editor of Pod News, a daily podcast that just talks about the industry of podcasting, and he came from BBC and radio initially. And if you ever listen to the show, of course, it's actually kind of almost like a radio show. It's very fast and quick. It's very structured, as well. And when I heard that, I was like, I thought of like, man, how did is every podcast like supposed to? When I was kind of getting back into podcasting, it's like, is every podcast supposed to sound like that? I want to ask you this question: when you work with clients, and they have an idea for a podcast, and they come to you and say, hey, I want to sound like, I'm going to say Joe Rogan, but whoever it could be out there. I have this idea, and I want it to sound like this. How do you help them formulate the fundamentals of their podcast so it sounds more like them? Or how do you maybe convince them first too that it needs to sound more like them than it has to sound like somebody else? Dave.
Yeah, great question. Well, I mean, firstly, there's just a bit of a distinguishment to make. So there's two types of podcasts, I guess. And we specifically, our clients, as people who they're not just doing the podcast for the fun, they actually really like it. They want to grow it. They probably want to turn it into a full-time thing. And then there's obviously people that are just podcasting as a complete hobby, and they don't mind, they're not really concerned about like the marketing side of it. And in that case, I say that's totally fine. Just absolutely go at it how you want. Just be completely what you want. Don't listen to what anyone says, and just do you. It's a fantastic hobby to have. For the people that they want to turn it into something, we have to come at it from a bit more of a tactical approach. So in terms of, formulating the podcast and kind of refining how it sounds and that kind of thing, I think what we encourage people to do is really, have the mindset of making it less about you and more about your audience. So what that involves in terms of like the actual content, the actual episode itself, if you're trying to grow the thing, if you're really trying to get out to more people, if you're trying to build a community, you can't just go on like a 5-minute tangent at the start of the podcast. You actually can't afford to waste precious seconds within the first 2 minutes of the podcast. Because in an age where people are overwhelmed and being literally bombarded with things every time they open the phone, the competition is just so stiff, unfortunately, for someone to just give you the time of day if your podcast doesn't immediately grip them. So one of the first things in terms of like episode structure and kind of formulating in that way, in terms of what you asked, would be really refine the first 2 minutes of your podcast. Call out the person you're talking to specifically. Tell them exactly what the podcast does, like you said yourself earlier. What problem is it solving? Problem doesn't have to be like anything bad, by the way. Problem could be just fulfilling the missing comedy in their life, depending on how you frame it. But then specifically, what is someone going to learn from this episode? Again, a lot of people start a podcast maybe, and again, totally fine. But if you want to grow it, you can't expect to have an hour-long podcast, but not in the first 2 minutes show anyone why they should actually give you an hour of their time when there's like literally millions of other episodes out there, among all the other notifications that are hitting their phones all the time. So it's about, really sharing in that first 2 minutes what they're going to learn or what they're going to be able to take away from the remaining hour, and then incentivizing people to stick around.
Excellent.
And I think I went off on a bit of a tangent myself there in terms of like just the first 2 minutes of the podcast. So I'll shut up now. I could go on in terms of the whole episode, that kind of thing, but that's something we really focus on. But I guess the overall mindset thing is just, having your listeners in mind, having the idea that if you want to grow it, you're not just making it for you. Everyone says like, oh, just do you, make it for you. And yeah, that's true. But also if you're trying to grow it, you must be making it for others as well.
Yeah. I love that part because they're typically most people probably started just because it's a passion project or something like that. And then some people move into it because they do have a passion for it, like Edward does. But then they start to think about, monetization and other things like that. And I want to talk about that in a little bit here. But I want to talk about something that's a little controversial. I was doing with controversy. I don't know. I already know where I stand on this one. I want to talk about downloads, man. I want to talk about this whole idea around downloads as this measure of success, right? And I know I got two guys on here that are geared towards towards downloads as well too. When we start to see in the marketplace, so okay, let me start back with about your podcast and when you started. When you started, is it more important for people to, almost potentially kind of acquire the knowledge that which is a download because they don't necessarily listen to it, but also the idea around making sure that you are crafting the podcast so that way it is, it's more the consumption of it is higher, right? As well too, right? So there's kind of this there's this new report out and it's by Bumper and it talks about listening time, right? It talks about, and I call it consumption, but it's listening time. And I am of the opinion that I think in the next 12 to 18 months that listening time and consumption is I think it's going to trump downloads. And it's just Steve. I ain't trying to mess up Tang or Anthony and have them get pissed off at me. Because I know they focus and helping people with downloads and stuff like that, man. Don't fight me. Don't hop on the first plane and come down here to Atlanta, man, and beat me up. But Edward, when you started your podcast, what was your main concern, or what's your level, or what's your definition of success when you have started your podcast and kind of morphed into now, from when you started to now? Because this will kind of help kind of move the discussion in the direction I want to take it.
I think with me, it wasn't about really the downloads and even now, it's not really about how many people view it too much. Like, I don't really over kind of look at that, because for me, the main point of view is if it's helping that one person and the one individual. So I'm really focusing on what does the audience want to hear. Okay, and if that's helping that kind of one person that was in my shoes, because that's the only reason why I'm doing my podcast, and I'm talking to professional players in football. I'm talking to entrepreneurs, and I'm talking to all these people. And if it helps that just that kind of one person helps to really with the target audience, then fundamentally that's all I care about. I don't really care about if that has 10,000 views or anything. I'm only at the age where I can't be thinking about that, but I'm only thinking about that one person, because if that was me in that shoes, then that would make me happy.
Yeah. Okay.
Amen.
Good. Oh, somebody said amen. Okay. I thought we're in church. Did you say amen? Okay. I got to pass around.
Amen. I'm hiring Edward. You've got a job. Come to Sussex.
Excellent, man. Excellent. Jamie, what are your thoughts, right? Because you do development work, right? You're a developer. And your main concern a lot of times is, as based on, because the fact I know you're always concerned about the end user, right? When you are developing something, right? Your mindset has always been, every time I spoke to you about whatever it is that you're doing, you were like, dude, it's the end user. It's the end user. I can put whatever it is that I want in there, but if the end user doesn't get fulfillment out of it, it doesn't matter, right? I'm not answering the question for you, but I'm just kind of laying some perspective on the fact of how I know you and what you think about. As it relates to this to podcasting and downloads and all this and whatever you want to call it, right? What are your thoughts? And when you are at over 500,000, thank you for the correction earlier, over 500,000 downloads, that's something. obviously because I said it, right? Not just because I said it, because that's a fact. I mean, what I mean is not because I said it, but it's because it's a fact. That's 500,000. Like that means something, right? Do you lead with that, or do you lead with the fact of what your podcast is about?
Yeah. So when I'm telling people about the that I create, I'm all about like getting across the value proposition, because it's easy for me to sit here and be big-headed and say, "Oh, but 500,000 downloads, that's not a lot because I achieved it." But for me, it's all about the value. And like you were saying, Steve, it's about the end user, the end consumer. What do they get out of the time that they give to me? And I believe it was something that both Anthony and Taig said. I think Taig said it explicitly, but I think both of you have said it. If you're asking someone for an hour of their time,
Yeah.
even if it's time whilst they're cleaning the dishes, whilst they're going for a walk, whilst they're sitting around doing whatever they're doing, you have to make that valuable to them, because you're taking that time from them. You're taking that attention from them, and then you have to give them something back. It can be like Taig said, it can be, here's a silly situation, we're going to riff on this, we're going to tell a story, we're going to spin a yarn, make you all laugh for an hour. Or it can be, and my value proposition is to get the knowledge that's in my head. Notice I don't say my knowledge, the knowledge that's in my head that I've collected, and give that back to people, right? Because I've talked to people like all of yourselves and gotten loads of value from talking to all of you today. But when I've talked to you separately, I've gotten loads of value. When I've talked to Cher and Nomad, who are in the chat here, I've gotten loads of value from those folks too. And so being able to echo that back and say, hey, here's this idea I've collected. It's not my knowledge. It's not me. It's not Jamie's knowledge. I possess it, but I didn't create it, right? Here's this idea that I'd love to give back to you. And that's kind of sparked my drive this year for pushing for compassion and caring, like you said, Steve, caring about the end user, the end consumer, because at the end of the day, it's them, like you said, Taig, it's them we're making the content for.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily us, right? We can create the best thing ever for us, and then we go, well, why isn't it seeing any downloads? Because nobody's interested in it, right? You're not creating something for the market. And at the end of the day, we need to be able to market our content, right? And so you need to know where those markets exist, who are in those markets. That's why you need to come back to the why, right? Why are you creating? And then why should someone listen, right?
Yeah.
And that's not, it's meant, I have to ask it in an imperative way. Hey, why should someone listen? Why should they listen? Because I'm trying to give them value. I'm trying to boost their spirits. I'm trying to teach them something. And then from that, you can then figure out how to get that to the next person. So you go and find where they hang out, and that I think is more important than looking at the the chart that just kind of goes up. Because as long as you're doing the right thing, your download numbers are always going to go up, right? They can't come down.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying. Yeah. You can't undownload a podcast, right?
That's true. I'm actually gonna try to do that. I'm gonna try to undownload like Matt's today as soon as I get an opportunity to. That's awesome, man. Anthony and Taig, you guys with Get More Listeners, How to Grow Your Podcast. I want to go back into what I was reading here about what you guys do, and this is podcasts. You share ideas and ask questions about tactics and strategy. And I feel like everybody's kind of almost saying the same thing, so to speak. And I didn't mean to talk about controversial from a download standpoint, because I think in the context of what you guys do, right? You guys can elaborate on this as well too. But when we think about downloads and even listening time, those are just nothing but byproducts of having a really good idea, implementing the proper tactics, and then executing on a proper strategy. And I sound like I'm a football coach, or I sound like I'm a commander in an army, right? Because we're talking about tactical and strategy and all this other stuff, but we're talking about podcasting here. When you guys think about what you do, is that how you guys approach that idea? Because it's not so much just with downloads, but you guys are focusing on talking about listeners, as well. Is that something that you guys have kind of changed or morphed into, or is that something that you've always kind of gone? Because you guys changed it up, right? It was Podcast Marketing Simplified or something like that. The name of before you something like that, right? Something like that. So you didn't think I was going to remember that. You didn't think I was going to remember that stuff. But what do you guys think about what I just talked about from a tactical strategy, standpoint when you guys are working with clients? I'll go with Anthony.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with everything you've said. I think the first thing, if you've got a podcast, you're trying to grow a podcast in terms of what we do with our clients, it starts from the foundations, right? And that's kind of the foundations of the content being the backbone of your podcast, your USP, what makes you different to everyone else. Why should they take an hour of their time to listen to you over listening to someone else who's famous and who's already built an audience and who's an authority? From there, at that point, then we kind of go into the actual, the structure of the podcast, you could say, the format, how do you want to deliver this and how can we increase that listen time? Because that plays into how many downloads you get.
True,
if someone listens to 10 seconds of your podcast, they haven't formed that as a habit. If they listen to the entire podcast, the likelihood is they've built that familiarity to some degree and they're going to go ahead and download another episode. So all these things, like I think, from doing this for a while now, for me and Ty, we start to recognize that everything is linked. Things aren't random. Things don't happen randomly. Even if it's a viral video or a viral podcast, that's not just random. Like people say it's random, but I think that's an excuse for not understanding how things might work. And the reason why I mentioned that is because at the start it wasn't that. Steve, at the start it was like, let's just give you a strategy and let's go run with it. Try this on social media, and then realize, hang on a minute, like I can generate all these views and all this traffic, send it to a podcast. If that podcast can't retain the listeners, they're just going to come in, they're going to leave just as fast as they came. And that's probably more emotionally draining for our clients, seeing their numbers go up and then fall down than anything else. So the structure needs to be there. And I think that's advice I would give to anyone right now is really, from a fundamental perspective, look at your podcast. And what Jamie and Tiger said, I'm going to echo it out again. I literally wrote a email today, which was something like, you create a podcast cover art. What's in it for your listeners? You write a newsletter. What's in it for your listeners? You post on social media. What's in it for your listeners? You create a piece of content. What's in it for your listeners? You change show description. What's in it for your listeners? You make a show notes. What's in it for your listeners? Like, constantly going back to that framing. What's in this for my listeners? In every single aspect of this, I have an hour conversation with a guest. What's in it for my listeners? Like, everything should always link back to that fundamental question: what's in it for my listeners? And building the strategy, building the tactics from there, you can't really go wrong, right?
Yeah, dude. I'm smiling because I was recording a podcast episode this morning, and I did a quick little reel about it because it literally took me 4 times to do it. The first I can't remember what happened the first time. Second time, it recorded just on the left side. The third time something else happened, and then the fourth time I was just like, screw it. But my passion for what I talk about is so much so that I just completely went after it. But that's not the reason I'm laughing. The reason I'm laughing is that because you just talked about like what's in it, right? What's in it for the listener. I use that like with them like all the time. I use that kind of throughout my career. Whenever I was talking to somebody about change or about a new direction or something new that they wanted to do as a leader, it was all about with them. Like what's in it for not just me, but what's in it for your team, right? I think I may have talked to you about this on your show, Matt, too, when we talked about leadership. It was like we forget about other people. We think our content is for us, and it's not. This is just Steve talking here. Maybe I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but I don't feel my content is for me. I feel whatever it is that I put out there, it's for my listeners and for them to consume and to do something with. And hopefully
you don't need a podcast for that, do you? That's
Yeah.
the interesting thing in all of this.
Come on,
Someone
man.
said to me, "How do you market? How do you
Come
market
on,
a
man.
show? How do I market my podcast?" And if you've got this, if you've thought about the why you're doing it and the what's in it for them, you don't need a podcast to go and engage that audience.
Right.
And this is what I've recently discovered. We just finished a 5-week boot camp, and if your listener avatar is on the money, like sorted, you know what they do, their behaviors, their pain points, what social media are using, where they're going to engage, where they hang out, what they drink, eat. If you know that, then you can go to those spaces and talk to people.
Yes.
Right? You don't need a podcast to say, "Hey, what do you think about this thing that I think is valuable? Does it help you?" They'll either say yes, no, or throw coffee in your face. One of those three might happen, right? But you don't need a podcast. But what I've just done there is podcast marketing. And this
Come
is
on.
the thing at the moment. There is no silver bullet. There is no down because, like Edward said, it's one person. We fix one person.
Yes.
We help them. And then you get word of mouth. And there is no marketing more powerful than word of mouth. So all these people who keep coming to me at the moment for coaching and consultancy. And in my Sherpa way, I say, go and find them. Talk to them.
Yeah.
See if they want your show.
Come on.
Because if they don't, think
Yes.
again. Like, find someone else to help, or maybe they didn't get it. You need to change the messaging and the branding.
Yes.
So podcast marketing isn't about marketing or downloads. It's about going out and engaging that audience, because you shouldn't think of this as one audio file. They're going to come to your website. They're going to come to your events. They're going to come and meet with you. They're going to buy your mugs.
All of it.
There's,
All of it.
there's this ecosystem around a podcast,
Mm.
which is not just an audio file, right?
Oh, dude. Okay. All right. I mean, I told myself I was going to try to keep this to an hour, but I can't. So you just talked about ecosystem. Like,
Yeah.
I love that, because the tendency that most people think about a podcast is the fact that I just go into, or I just record and I upload it, and bada bing, bada boom, right? It's a done deal. That's me. That's done and dusted, and it's not. And there are so many more things to that. Could you elaborate a little bit on that word ecosystem as it relates to, not just the concept of having a podcast, but actually producing a podcast, and then all those other things that go along with it as well? Because you said it, but I want people to hear a little bit more in depth about that.
Well, I guess I'll use the second most searched term for podcasting, which is how to monetize, right?
Yeah.
You can monetize a podcast. A podcast can be at a different point in terms of monetization. You can monetize from your podcast. Say you've got a sponsorship model, CPM, for every 1,000 people that listen to your show, you put an ad in, you get $25. You can monetize your podcast. But there's so many people out there that are creating content to go somewhere else. They just don't put the CTAs in right and have people go and do it. So if you've got products and services, you can use your podcast at the top of the funnel. It can make money in the middle of the funnel. You can garner emails. The podcast can have so much more going on around it. So just in show, you can have calls to action where people go and give you money via Patreon, or just listen to your adverts, or go and buy your things. And then outside of your show, you've got events, meetups. If you've got a load of people that are on board with your message and what you're trying to do, it's probably a good idea to get them all together in a room, because together we'll go further, right? And that's what I kind of mean about ecosystem. It's thinking of where your podcast is. You can just solve a problem. Sure, I can educate people about entrepreneurial X, Y, Z. We're going to talk to this expert. They're going to tell us about Facebook ads this week. I've learned Facebook ads. I'm going to go and make money. That's just sort of an island. But podcasting isn't an island. It's the beginning of a conversation. It takes people somewhere else, which is why we sort of say total downloads is irrelevant, because if people came in, looked in the shop and didn't buy anything, then, the shop's going to shut eventually. So it's creating a reason for people to stay, enjoy it, engage with you. The host is so important in that, and the editing is so important in that, and what you offer outside of it is so important. So yeah.
Oh, all right. I'm gonna do one last question, and then we're gonna shut this puppy down, because I need you guys to get back to your day. And I know that the audience is getting a lot of value out of this, and I just appreciate that as well too. What's going on? So if you guys have any last minute questions or anything like that, please go ahead and ask us, so we can go ahead and answer that question for you too. And I think your camera's flickering a little bit, Matt.
It is going crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it didn't like your answer or something. Like it was, it's going crazy, man. Yeah, it's all about the downloads. What are you talking about? We'll appreciate that. We'll appreciate
It's an
that.
emotional camera. I'm sorry.
It's an emotional camera. You need to get it something, man. All right. I want to ask you guys I know we're already 3 months into the year, but I don't care. I want to ask you just a prediction that you guys have for podcasting, and it could be something that you read, or it could be just something that you're thinking about. And I'm not. It could be something that's just completely just off to the left. I really don't care. I really just want to know why we have this level of expertise, on the stage. I really want to know your perspective or a prediction that you have for podcasting in 2023 and maybe into 2024. What are some of your thoughts that you could share with the audience that's going to help them, like now, but they can also apply it so that they can get better in the future? All right, I'm going to start with you, Jamie.
So one of my things is I think things are going to change in a drastic way, and I think AI and ChatGPT are going to be part of it, but I think the consumption is going to change, right? Hopefully, we're all starting this conversation of moving away from downloads, right? Although I said that in a big number earlier, and it doesn't matter to me, right? I think that a lot of people are going to be focusing on, like, we're in the TikTok generation, right? Where you can quite literally have your phone and go, I'm 4 seconds into this, don't like it. 3 seconds into it, don't like it. A second in, don't like it. It's not even loaded, don't like it, right? And so I think that's going to I don't think it's going to be a negative, but I think it's going to greatly impact the types of content that we can create. And like everyone's already said, right? Your first 2 minutes, your first 30 seconds, whatever, is going to be the most important thing going forward, and then it'll become the first 10 seconds the most important thing, and then somehow we'll squeeze it down to 5, right? And it'll be like you're listening at one speed, and it'll be like, in this episode, and then the music starts, right? Because we'll have to squeeze so much into those first couple of seconds, because we need to get it out there for people who've become sort of addicted to this swipe quickly on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, right? Because as we've all said, we're fighting for people's attention, and we need to give them that value, that reason for sticking with us. And I think that's going to be the big thing that changes. How it changes, I don't know, but I think that's going to be the big thing.
Excellent. Mr. Anthony, give me your perspective, your thoughts around a prediction for 2023 into 2024.
I completely agree with Jamie, to be honest. I think we're going to see definitely more of a need for content that's a lot more fast paced. But I have got to say, I think the pendulum is going to swing drastically one way, but same with everything, is going to swing back the other way as well. And then long form, slow content that's always going to be around is just going to be a pendulum that's going to be constantly swinging, and at some point is going to equilibrate to kind of honestly probably just a bit of normality, where there's going to be some people who like short form for a specific thing, but also like long form as well, and there's the exact same avatar. Yeah, I think that's the thing with most things in life, right? There's that pendulum. One time everyone's crazy about lifting heavy weights and going all out and maxing out, then everyone's like, no, you should go to the gym 3 times a week and not train hard because you need the rest. So I think we're going to see the exact same thing within the podcasting space. As long as you're positioned in the right way, as long as you're constantly iterating the podcast for your listeners, thinking what's in it for them, most people should be fine. If you're not, change something.
Yeah, agreed. Mr. Edward, what are your thoughts?
It's more what I hope for me, because fundamentally, for me, of course, I know what you know. I think everyone in this room right now who I'm talking to, you all have you all have like a background, and you all come from a place, and you all have had hard times in life where you've had to dig through like a place, etc. And I feel like on podcasts you can learn from a lot of people that have a lot of money, or we're very well known, but you don't learn a lot from people that are just all ordinary people that are not really known. And I want to have on my podcast myself, even just ordinary people that have something to tell. They have a story to tell that's organic, that comes from themselves. Because not all successful people have money. Not all successful people wear capes. Not all successful people are on TV. There are successful people that have come from adversity. They've come from hard kind of background, and they've went through something to get where they are. And there are people that need to be heard. And for me, that's my aim with my podcast for sure.
Dude. And I wish I was that cool at 15. And even now, I'm not even that cool as you are, dude. Awesome, Edward. Awesome. All right, Tag. What's your prediction, sir?
Yeah, well, I'll actually just add to Edward, and I think, on the basis of you're kind of saying anyone being able to share a story, everyone being able to share their unique story. I think obviously the big shift with podcasting growing exponentially, it's kind of a switch from, it's definitely not the right word, but like controlled media to just like the media that anyone can do. I'm butchering the actual, the term for that. It's like mass media to like, I don't know, you know what I mean, the word. But something that anyone can get into. Basically, anyone can have a platform rather than it being withheld by gatekeepers. Like whether it's radio or something like that. So I think on that, obviously, there's going to be a lot more authenticity being able to kind of rise in the world. But with that said, I think the main thing is just going to keep growing exponentially. I don't have any stats to hand, but just a quick Google will tell you that it's massively on the rise. I'm also on about podcast listeners rather than people getting into podcasts, but obviously there's a correlation, right? The more people that are aware of it, the more people that are actually going to start one.
Yeah.
But with that said, I guess like for someone who is a podcaster, you could see that as a bad thing because you see, there's so many more people doing it. It's going to be harder to cut through the noise. But I think it's important to state that also the majority of people actually quit their podcast quite early because obviously, it's a lot more work than people think to actually maintain it. Again, if you're just doing a hobby, that's totally fine to start it and then realize actually this is a lot, right? And then you realize it's not what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with that, but I just think it's important for people to know that even though podcasting there's so many new podcasts coming. If you're really serious about, really doing a podcast, you shouldn't be worried about the amount of people getting into it because, a lot of people will stop and the real dedicated people who are really doing it because they love it will always shine through.
Excellent, man. Excellent. And then last, but very, very, very not least, Mr. Matt, what's your bold prediction or just prediction, if you will?
So I've got two. I think video is going to be a global mass experiment that I don't know how it will work out. I know from years of being in TV and film and stuff that it's hard to get right video. And as we've all mentioned, there's so much content to be consumed. The fact that you're just doing video, I don't think is going to benefit you. So I'm interested to see what new podcasters will think that they need an Impulsive and a Diary of a CEO kind of vibe and just film all their interviews. But it massively affects the creative, which we've all touched on, that if you care about your listener, then you need to edit. It's a lot easier to edit audio only and engage your community as opposed to putting out videos on TikTok and just hoping people find their way. So I think video is going to be a mass global experiment, which I don't know how that will go. Technology is so cheap, it could go well and everyone becomes a TV star. But the second thing is the success stories will have two things. They'll have passion and they'll have a plan. You can monetize a hobby podcast. You can, and I don't consider it monetizing. I consider it's a guarantee of longevity. It's how does it sustain itself? You're never going to make millions podcasting. Joe Rogan, remember, did it for 11 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't an overnight success. And the guy, was a TV presenter, a jiu-jitsu fighter, a personality, a commentator, a UFC commentator. He's done his time in the trenches to make his millions. So that's something nice to aspire to. But really, if you've got the passion like Edward and you know why you're doing it, then you can find ways of sustaining it longer. Longevity, passion, that's the key to success, I think. So those are the trends. That's what we'll see next year. The ones that put it all in, had a plan, had passion, bosh. Video, don't know.
There you go. I just wanted to go through just to make sure we acknowledge everybody. Thanks, Matt, for the breakdown of the podcast ecosystem.
Very welcome.
I appreciate each and every one of you. This has been an excellent panel. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you for for a valuable conversation. Great panel. Indeed. Thank you all for your insights. Where are the women? I know I had Susie. I know I had our good friend Susie to try to bring her on, and she was unable to do it. I know that I hear you. There's a lot of testosterone here. My apologies. There's a lot of UK testosterone that we got going on, man. But we'll get it figured out for next time, as well. Thank you. And then excellent. Less from Steve. I'm not sure what that means. There you go. Guys, I got to tell you, I just want to thank you all, for being here today. I appreciate all of you individually for who you are and what you bring, and my ability to just be able to connect with you through my journey as a podcaster, right? You have all added something different to me in my journey. Edward, you are probably the newest of the bunch. Jamie, you're the oldest of the bunch. Edward, dude, you have truly inspired me, man. I'll make sure that I have one more part. Yeah, you have truly inspired me. I don't know. I've done retail, my entire life, and people always has told me there's one thing I know, it's people, and I don't know what it was that when I saw you give that first interview, I was like, whenever I think about doing something from a UK perspective, I gotta have this dude on. And I'm so happy that I've had you on today. Everybody around you, of course, are very seasoned in what they do. You're newer to this, but you have really kind of set a standard, I think, for all of us on this show, and also the people that are listening, around, overcoming and just being who you are and not really caring what other people think, because you have a passion for what it is that you want to do, and for the people that you want to connect with and help. So I just wanted to say that, man. I really appreciate you. Jamie, you're a bum. Jamie, you're a bum. Can't stand you. Anthony, Tig, you both are horrible people. Don't go to their website. Don't go to them. Matt, you're a genius. No, I'm joking. Each and every one of you are amazing. I'm going to make sure I have links to your podcast, and also everything in the description below. Thank you guys so much for being here. Stay in the green room for a second while I close this out. All right, cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Woo, man, oh man. I knew that there was something different about how the UK approaches podcasting, right? There is a sense of the level of professionalism and structure, and I think as a podcaster, whether you're here in the States or you're in the Philippines or wherever you may be, I think we can learn something about understanding the professional nature that needs to take place from a podcasting standpoint. But I think the other thing that we needed to take away from today was around the passion that you need to have, and around that your podcast isn't just a podcast. Your podcast, to use Matt's term, is an ecosystem. It's not just there to just put something out there. It's more along the lines of making sure that you're touching and connecting with your audience as well. And that's what a podcast does. I think your podcast is called to lift people up and to connect people and to move them to where they are to where it is that you want them to be. You can do that with the podcast. Well, thank you so much for being here, today. It's a different time slot for us, but I wanted to be sensitive to my guys over in the UK. From a time slot standpoint, Podcasters Live is here focused on helping authors and leaders kind of grow their platforms, utilizing the powerful tools of podcasting and live streaming. And we thank you so much for being here tonight and connecting with us. If you have any more questions, if you're looking at this on a replay, please make sure you go ahead and do that for us, and we will make sure we answer any of those questions. Have a great day, and God bless.